Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for this session. My name is Dennis. I'm the Regional Sales Director for Menlo, covering Southeast Asia. So a very quick introduction to myself. I've been in the cybersecurity industry for more than 10 years right now. Previous organizations included companies like Fortinet, FireEye, as well as Carbon Black. So I'm based in Singapore. And we're doing this as a new way of introducing our solutions and trying to reach the masses given the current situation that we're facing. But today, my topic will be about how do we embrace a remote workforce. We want to ensure that we deliver the best experience possible for our customers, for our prospects, for the users, increasing their productivity, but for the organization, it's about reducing the cost. So if you look at Menlo Security, this is the only slide that really talks about Menlo in detail. So a little backstory here. Around 2012, three of our co-founders who had very good, extensive cybersecurity history with companies like Juniper Networks, with companies like Checkpoint, decided to form an organization to really help address some of the security concerns. And what are these security concerns? Primarily through the two vectors or the two main vectors where users are accessing the internet. So it's either through the web or through email. So to make the story a little bit more bite-sized, more consumable for you, we effectively started the organization and landed our first big customer. That was in 2014 when we productized our product. The first customer ever was at that point in time the largest financial company called JP Morgan Chase. Now JP Morgan has also not just become our customer, but they have also become our investor. So the thing about Menlo Security, we shall drive a little bit more later on, talking about some of the key benefits, how we've been helping our customers, as well as a use case to share with you. More importantly here is that for Menlo Security, we started out as a cloud company, but we understand the intrinsic nature of markets like in Southeast Asia. So with regards to that, some organizations, some government institutions, some financial companies may not yet have adopted cloud, right? So with that said, we do have on-premise options for customers. But cloud really is the way to go. Given this current situation that we are in, it helps organizations have better visibility. It helps organizations achieve central administrative, right? So they can actually capture what is happening to their users who are working remotely, and also the ease of deployment and the speed of deployment. So let's take a look very quickly on this particular chart. I think this is something that we are all pretty familiar with. The blue bar states what's happening before COVID, and the orange bar is essentially what's happening right now. So if you look at the beginning, you will see that probably about 10% of the workforce is really working remotely, right? This is pretty much usual. People will be coming into the office. But as we slide towards COVID, where we are in right now, we started to see a huge pickup of about nearly 100% or an entire workforce having to work remotely or working from home. Now, this is true, especially a couple of months back when we had, different countries going into lockdown. Countries like, for example, in Malaysia, they actually has put across a mandate as a policy that organizations, regardless whether it's private sector or whether it's a public sector, they have to have some form of work from home policy in place. Now, certain countries has basically had some of the restrictions lifted. However, we have started to see a resurgence of the current situation, the pandemic that is happening. And it basically brings us back to square one, right? You have more of your staff basically working from home. Countries in Philippines, for example, has gone into conditional quarantine, for example. So what we've done is that we've set out to talk to some of our customers, some of our prospects. And these are essentially the challenges that a lot of organizations, not just globally, not just in the region, but primarily in the Philippines, are actually facing. Now let's take a look at some of these three. And if you look at the flow of them while you're reading through it, you will see that it is essentially intertwined and it weaves together very, very seamlessly. Now, work from home readiness, a lot of organizations were facing the problems when lockdowns were called. So one of the technologies they basically had to ride on to ensure that the users who are working from their home had secure access to the applications as well as the internet, whereby allowing the organization to have better control and visibility into how they're accessing certain files, certain applications, or even the internet, was through VPN, right? But if you look at it, VPN, as per my previous chart that was showing you, In most cases, a lot of organizations only cater to about 5 to 10% of their workforce working remotely. This was your remote workforce that could be traveling, that could be working from a satellite office, etc. But what happens is that when working from home, a huge shift, right? When the lockdown was called, a huge shift of these workers working from home, 100% of your workforce is something that a lot of times the VPN infrastructure could not, right? It could not cope with. And the last part really is about the human side of things. All of a sudden, you have your workers who are working remotely. They're outside of the security bubble because we understand that a lot of organizations has their security products deployed either in the headquarters or in the data center. All of a sudden, their workers are out of the security bubble of the HQ. They're working from home. They're exposed, right? And through VPNing back just to go through internet access, it has consumed a lot of bandwidth. It has led to a lot of users essentially facing very slow response times, very slow loading of websites, thus decreasing their user experience. And you know what? At the end of the day, when your users are facing slowness, they don't really become very productive, do they? So on the largest scheme of things, when we are looking at, from a global perspective, what COVID's impact has really been, we found that it is pretty much the same as what we have been sharing with regards to how the challenges have been for Philippines. You will see that there's less visibility of your tele workers. A lot of times the administrators, the security team lose visibility and lose control of how their employees are actually working, are actually accessing certain files, accessing the internet from their home. And obviously, I think one of the clearest facts here is that home Wi-Fi is definitely less secure than what you have deployed in your enterprise or even in your agency. We understand that VPN has a lot of vulnerabilities and we are here to address it. And that's why Menlo has a solution and a platform in place to mitigate all of this risk, to help customers achieve what we call a 100% secure environment while ensuring that the user's productivity increases, while ensuring that the user's experience is I would say as great a possibility, great a stance as they have as previously. Now, this is an instance whereby we essentially took a customer's, I would say their sample size, and we did a test. And the customer essentially has told us that over a period of 3 months or around 90 days, almost 125,000 URLs or malicious URLs were accessed. Now, access means that they were clicked. Imagine this particular customer who has about 3.5 million users spread across globally, a small percentage of them actually clicking on the emails which could be malicious, opening up attachments which could be malicious. If that happens in your environment, it is detrimental. And we all understand that. But how do we mitigate this risk while ensuring we are controlling what our users are accessing, but at the same time being as transparent as possible for them? Of course, there are multitudes of factors that's affecting an environment, right? Especially we've looked at the perspective of how the users are accessing certain websites, how VPN is slowing down the user experience, is driving productivity low. But what we really want to understand is also what are some of the intangible so-called issues that would actually have caused or have been caused through this particular approach. Now, one of which is essentially the cost of imperfect security. Right. The problem here is that when you have users who are, VPNing back to your HQ, another idea here is that with SOC being so rampant, a lot of people are building up SOCs. It's not just about, the people that you have. It's not just about the tools and the processes that you've put in place. It's really about the time that is being consumed because of the amount of alerts that is reaching your SOC team. So we're looking to drive that down lower. Now, in Menlo, what we're essentially looking at is how do we drive a hybrid workforce, right? So in this particular picture, you will see very clearly, we're allowing users to write on VPN, to continue to allow them to have access to certain business applications and to have that access securely. Now, what Menlo will come in to do here is that for certain applications on the cloud, for email as well as for web, this is where Menlo will take on the load on your user's behalf. Right? So effectively creating two divides. One is still maintaining the VPN infrastructure that you have already invested in, ensuring that you get secure access to business applications. Menlo takes everything else when it comes to internet access, especially when you're trying to drive your users to use more of either the web or the email vectors. So this really shows the benefits around what Menlo has been able to deliver to our customers. Now, if you look at everything that I've shared with regards to the problems and the issues, this is where Menlo basically comes in to address those issues directly for our customers. Now, it's transparent to users, which means to say that we are able to deploy to your users regardless of where they are, and we are able to deploy without having to have an agent installed on their endpoints, right? Having an agent installed on the endpoints drives a lot of complexity, right? You want to ensure that the particular agent that is going to the endpoint does not, have a conflict or whatsoever with regards to the existing agents that are already on your endpoint. And one additional important point here is that we do not want an agent to go onto the endpoint to add to the burden of what limited resources that particular endpoint already has. Besides the security aspects, it's also the fact that for certain countries where bandwidth is always an issue, where bandwidth is always a problem from a perspective of cost, we have been able to free up bandwidth for customers in that perspective, saving them more money, right? That drives cost savings. So what is isolation? To put it in perspective, I have a small little diagram here on my right. Now, before isolation comes into play, what happens is that when every single time a user clicks on a website, be it CNN.com, be it Bloomberg, be it BBC, or any of the local websites that they want to go to, the user will have to do one of three things, right? Which is essentially done by the browser. The first is that they will open up the browser, they will go to the URL. That particular browser will then fetch from the internet or from the web the script to basically execute on their own endpoint. That script will essentially get executed, it will be delivered to the endpoint, it will get executed, and that's where it will build up and it will render the web page, right? That's where the challenges are. Because if any of the malicious codes has been injected into that script, which we felt was good at the first place, those will have been executed on the endpoint. And that essentially is one of the main ways ransomware has been able to hit so many customers, so many businesses. Now, where Menlo comes into play is that we essentially create an air gap between the user and the internet. So think of remote browser isolation. We effectively become your surrogate. We become your sacrificial lamb. So every single time a user opens up a browser, what happens within Menlo's platform is that we create a virtual container, and in that virtual container is what we call the remote browser. The remote browser will be the one that will be touching the internet on the user's behalf, right? Which means the user never really touched the internet anymore, which essentially means that you have the promise of an air-gap environment where you have perfect security, right? But traditional air-gap environments would require you to cut off the internet. But with Menlo's platform, there is no longer a need to cut off the internet. So back to the example, the remote browser will call on the website, whichever the website that the customer or the user has actually typed on. It will fetch the script and execute it within the remote browser inside the virtual container. And every single time we see that run, in near real time, we will create a brand new script, not using any of the original lines of codes from the original script, and we will pass that new script over to the user machine to have it execute as well as to render the page. So to the user, it's totally transparent. To them, they feel that I'm still going to the web page directly. However, through Menlo, they are not. They are in a air-gapped environment. Now, the last piece of this here is that every single time the user closes up their website or the browser, what happens is that the isolation capsule will then dispose of that particular virtual container. So you have any concerns around privacy issues, any personal identifiable issues, all this is basically eradicated because we never reuse any of the previously used virtual containers. So I hope that gives you a very quick snapshot as to some of the benefits we have been able to help with our customers, addressing some of their challenges, as well as a very quick snapshot into what Menlo essentially does. Now, I wanted to pivot a little bit more to show you a particular use case which is a large US government institution called DISA. So DISA is effectively the DoD of the United States. Anything from air, land, sea is basically covered by DISA. Now, they are the single largest customer of Menlo with 3.5 million users deployed globally. Now, the reasons why I wanted to share this with you is because a lot of the challenges, regardless of whether you on the other side are from a private sector or public sector, a lot of these issues that they're facing right now are extremely relatable. Now, the first one obviously is the malware and phishing issues that they're continuing to face. Now, we understand that obviously DoD or DISA has got an extremely mature and extremely high level security infrastructure in place, but yet at the same time, they're still facing a lot of issues with regards to malware. Right? And on the extreme end of things here, you will see that the users are constantly facing extremely slow web experience. So the user's experience is degrading, right? Primarily because the remote workers are accessing the internet through VPN. Now, this basically boils down to the point is that when users get extremely bad user experience, chances of them staying on the internet or staying on their laptop to actually work is reduced, is far significantly reduced. Now, if we open up the shell and then we really dive a little deeper into some of their requirements, you will start to see a pretty relatable part in terms of what their requirements are and what certain organizations, be it public sector or even private sector, are facing. They're looking at adopting a solution that improves the security. They're looking at not just, paying a certain vendor for a solution to their problems, but also ensuring that they can drive cost savings, right? On top of that, that particular vendor of choice has to be able to return visibility and control to their security team. And last but not least, taking in mind of the problems the users were facing, how do we actually improve their users' web performance? Now, if you take all this and you paper it down, you will start to see that it is really relatable. It is concerns that you might be facing in your current environment. And these were the requirements that they set out in 2018 when they were looking for a remote browser isolation vendor to work with. So what Menlo has been able to do? Menlo has been able to deliver on their requirements and a lot more. So some of the snapshots here are, we basically have improved the web experience, not just for the users in the United States, but any of their staff members who have been deployed, be in Afghanistan or even in Pakistan, right? In the different camps, they were saying that the user experience has tremendously improved. Cost savings was also returned to the customer because they eliminated the need for the proxies in their current environment. They moved to cloud with Menlo, and they are one of the largest cloud consumers for our organization. But the last piece here, which is extremely relatable to the Philippines, is about the bandwidth savings that we've managed to drive for them. So these are some of the challenges that they had and some of the benefits that we've been able to deliver to this particular customer. Now, of course, nothing beats what the customer is saying. So we actually have, if you want to, you can head over to Google and search for this particular Gartner Peer Insights. That's where you will start to see some of our customers giving reviews with regards to our product, our platform, and how we've been able to help our customers. With that said, I hope you've enjoyed this session. If you have any questions or whatsoever, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a safe day. Thank you.